Welcome to History Crossroads, where past meets present, and every story reveals a new path through time. Welcome to History Crossroads, where we examine the intersection of law, history, and human behavior. Today's episode delves into one of the most egregious cases of corruption in American law enforcement. Detectives Luis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa were celebrated members of the NYPD, known for their impressive arrest records and dedication to cracking high profile cases. For example, Eppolito earned acclaim for apprehending a notorious drug kingpin in a high stakes operation that made headlines across the city. Meanwhile, Caracappa's meticulous work on a high profile murder case earned him respect and accolades within the department. These achievements painted a picture of exemplary law enforcement officers masking the dark truth of their criminal betrayals. Eppolito, in particular, was commended for his investigative instincts, earning numerous accolades throughout his career. Caracappa's meticulous approach to homicide investigations made him a respected figure in the department's elite organized crime homicide unit. Yet behind their badges lay a dark secret. These officers were deeply entangled with the Mafia, aiding and abetting criminal activities rather than dismantling them. Instead of protecting New York City, they turned their skills toward enriching themselves in the Lucchese crime family. Imagine Eppolito, a larger than life character with a stocky build and a flashy demeanor, walking confidently into precincts as if he owned the place. His boisterous laughter would echo through the halls, masking the shadowy deals he made in back rooms. Meanwhile, Caracappa, thin, reserved, and perpetually stoic, slipped through the precinct like a ghost, unnoticed and unassuming, quietly gathering intelligence for the underworld. Together, they formed a duo that blurred the line between law enforcement and organized crime. What motivated these men to betray the very institution they swore to uphold? How did their actions ripple through the NYPD and the city they betrayed? And what lessons can we extract from their rise and fall? Let's unpack this complex narrative of greed, betrayal, and systemic corruption. Luis Eppolito was born into a family that epitomized organized crime. His father, Ralph Fats Eppolito, was a Gambino crime family associate. From an early age, Luis was steeped in a culture of secrecy, loyalty, and opportunism. However, his decision to join the NYPD in 1969 seemed to signal a break from his legacy, a surprising choice for someone with such deep familial ties to criminal enterprises. Initially, Eppolito thrived in the NYPD. He earned accolades for his work and climbed the ranks, projecting an image of a hardworking and dedicated officer. Picture Eppolito at an NYPD ceremony, his chest gleaming with medals as flashbulbs popped around him. To his colleagues, he appeared larger than life, a detective who could handle the toughest cases with ease. But look closer, and the cracks began to show. His panache for flashy suits and expensive jewelry stood out, a stark contrast to the modest salaries of most detectives. These ostentatious displays hinted at something far more sinister beneath the surface. Yet, his flashy lifestyle, including expensive cars and lavish spending, raised eyebrows among his peers. Rumors began circulating that he was leaking sensitive police information to Mafia contacts. These suspicions were compounded by unusual patterns, such as unsolved cases involving organized crime figures and evidence that seemed to vanish from investigations he oversaw. Eppolito's dual identity became increasingly evident as he exploited his position to provide cover for his criminal associates. In one instance, he arranged for a suspect with ties to the Mafia to receive an unusually lenient interrogation, ensuring that they had time to destroy critical evidence. Picture Eppolito in a precinct interview room, leaning casually against the wall, his tone more akin to a friend giving advice than an officer seeking the truth. This manipulation not only thwarted the investigation, but further cemented his loyalty to the underworld. Imagine a dimly lit NYPD office at night, with Eppolito leaning over his desk, carefully stalling paperwork while exchanging knowing glances with a shadowy visitor. This calculated move not only showcased his willingness to obstruct justice, but also highlighted the depth of his allegiance and his underworld connection. Whether it was tipping off mobsters about pending investigations or facilitating missteps in evidence handling, he walked a dangerous line between law enforcement and criminality. The question remains, was Eppolito attempting to escape his family's criminal shadow, or was he leveraging his heritage to manipulate the system for personal gain? His actions reveal a man adept at maintaining appearances. To his colleagues, he was a decorated detective. To the underworld, he was a valuable ally. This ability to exist in two worlds became his greatest weapon, and ultimately his undoing. Stephen Caracappa's trajectory differed from Eppolito's. He lacked familial ties to organized crime and initially built a reputation as a meticulous and disciplined detective. Assigned to the NYPD's elite organized crime homicide unit, Caracappa gained unparalleled access to intelligence on the Mafia's activities. Yet this access proved too tempting to resist. Caracappa's reserved demeanor and methodical work earned him trust within the department, but these same traits made him an ideal mole for the Lucchese crime family. His quiet and disciplined nature allowed him to fly under the radar, never drawing undue attention to himself. Colleagues saw him as a dedicated officer, meticulously organized and dependable, which made it almost unthinkable that he could be involved in wrongdoing. This reputation afforded him access to sensitive information without suspicion, while his calculated discretion ensured that he could share key details with the Mafia without arousing doubt. It was this careful balancing act that made Caracappa indispensable to both the NYPD and the criminal underworld. Picture Caracappa hunched over a desk, his wire rimmed glasses catching the faint glow of a desk lamp, meticulously copying files into a worn leather notebook. His partnership with Eppolito was not born of camaraderie, but of mutual benefit. Eppolito's connections provided entry into the Mafia's inner circle, while Caracappa's access to police records ensured that criminal operations ran smoothly and without interference. One of their most damning betrayals involved leaking the identity of an informant to Anthony Gaspipe Casso, the Lucchese underboss. This informant was a cornerstone of an ongoing investigation into organized crime, providing critical details about the Lucchese family's operations and connections. The loss of such a key witness not only derailed the investigation, but also sent a chilling message to other potential informants, effectively silencing those who might have come forward. This informant, a key witness in the investigation, was brutally murdered as a result. This act of treachery sent shockwaves through the NYPD and further deepened mistrust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. Caracappa's quiet professionalism masked his duplicity, his ability to seamlessly blend into NYPD's ranks while engaging in such high level corruption underscores the insidious nature of their operation. Together, he and Eppolito epitomized the very corruption they were sworn to combat. At the core of their corruption was their relationship with the Lucchese crime family. Anthony Gaspipe Casso, the family's ruthless underboss, saw the value in having two NYPD detectives on his payroll. Picture a dimly lit Italian restaurant, its red checkered tablecloths soaked in the aroma of garlic and marinara. In the corner booth, Eppolito and Caracappa sit across from Casso, their badges tucked away, replaced by casual grins as a briefcase slides across the table. Inside lies not just cash, but the promise of mutual betrayal, of justice, integrity, and trust. Casso valued them for more than their badges. Their insider knowledge was a weapon, one that allowed the Lucchese family to stay one step ahead of the law. Caracappa, meticulous as always, would compile dossiers on investigations targeting the family, his notes precise and damning if they ever reached the courts. Eppolito, the consummate showman, would deliver these files with a flourish, cracking jokes, and sharing a glass of wine with the underboss. Picture him laughing loudly as he boasts about how he made another case, quote, disappear. Casso, impressed, slaps him on the back and toasts to their partnership. Their betrayal extended beyond information. They became enforcers, their hands stained with the blood of the family's enemies. One of their most infamous acts was the mistaken identity killing of Nicholas Guido, an innocent man targeted on Christmas Day. Visualize a quiet Brooklyn street adorned with holiday lights, the air crisp with the smell of pine and distant laughter. Guido, arms laden with wrapped gifts, steps outside his home, his face lit with the glow of festive decorations. A car pulls up, its windows tinted, and without warning, gunfire erupts. Guido collapses, the snow beneath him turning crimson. The shooters speed away, leaving behind a scene of horror that shatters a family and a community. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines scream of corruption, and whispers of dirty cops ripple through Brooklyn's neighborhoods. Families look at their local precincts with suspicion, wondering how deep the betrayal runs. Meanwhile, Eppolito and Caracappa, unfazed, celebrate their payday in a dimly lit bar, the jukebox crooning a Sinatra tune as they raise their glasses to another job well done. Their work allowed the Lucchese family to thrive. Investigations stalled inexplicably, witnesses vanished, and the rivals were eliminated with surgical precision. Picture a cluttered NYPD evidence room, its shelves lined with unmarked boxes, each one a silent testament to a case gone cold. Somewhere within, crucial evidence lies buried, intentionally misfiled by Caracappa's steady hand. Meanwhile, Eppolito distracts his colleagues with tales of his heroic arrest, his charm shielding his darker deeds. The impact of their corruption was profound. Communities once trusting of the NYPD grew wary. Parents warned their children to avoid the police, fearing the very institution meant to protect them. Tensions simmered as residents questioned if justice was ever possible when those sworn to uphold it actively worked against it. Their betrayal created ripples far beyond the individuals they victimized, sowing seeds of doubt across the entire city, turning trust into suspicion and hope into despair. For years, Eppolito and Caracappa operated with impunity. Their badges provided a shield, and their colleagues never imagined the two decorated detectives could betray the force so completely. But in 2005, their double lives began to unravel. Federal investigation, fueled by wiretaps and informant testimonies, brought their corruption to light. Imagine the courtroom, a grand hall with vaulted ceilings, echoing with whispers and the clicks of cameras. Sunlight filters through the tall windows, highlighting the tense faces of journalists scribbling notes. Eppolito and Caracappa sit at the defense table, their expressions masked of indifference. The prosecutor rises, her voice slicing through the silence as she lays out the evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, these are not just crimes of greed, these are betrayals of the public trust. On the prosecution's screen, surveillance footage flickers to life, showing the pair meeting shadowy figures in dimly lit diners and handing over envelopes thick with cash. Wiretap recordings play next. Casso's voice growls commands, and Eppolito responds with casual confidence. Consider it done. The courtroom is silent, except for the occasional gasp from the audience. Former Mafia associates take the stand, their voices shaking as they recount the Mafia cops' chilling efficiency. One witness describes being driven to a secluded warehouse by Caracappa, who sat silently as Eppolito issued threats. Another describes how Eppolito gleefully bragged about making cases disappear. The damning testimonies build a mosaic of corruption, leaving the jury visibly shaken. Each piece of evidence paints a vivid picture of corruption: bank statements showing inexplicable wealth, detailed schedules mapping the dates of murders to coinciding police records, and receipts from luxurious trips the two took, funded by blood money. The prosecution masterfully weaves these into a narrative, illustrating the sheer audacity of their crimes. As the jury deliberates, tension hangs thick in the air. Hours later, the foreperson rises, holding the verdict guilty on all counts. Gasps and murmurs ripple through the room. Eppolito's face turns a shade of crimson, while Caracappa's stoic facade finally cracks, his jaw tightening as he stares ahead. In 2006, both men were convicted on multiple charges, including racketeering, murder, and obstruction of justice. Eppolito received life plus 100 years. Caracappa, life plus 80 years. The sentencing was a victory for justice, but the damage they inflicted on the NYPD's reputation would take years to repair. Picture a press conference held on the courthouse steps. Flanked by officials, the district attorney addresses the cameras. Today, justice prevailed, but let us not forget the cost. Their actions became a case study in how corruption can infiltrate even the most trusted institutions. Imagine the size of relief and anger in the courtroom as the verdict was read. Justice served, but at great cost. Victims' families hold photographs of their loved ones, their faces mixtures of grief and vindication. The NYPD leadership, meanwhile, begins the slow process of rebuilding trust, launching initiatives to ensure such betrayal could never happen again. It's a moment both of accountability and of reckoning for the system they betrayed. The story of Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa is more than a tale of personal greed. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of trust in law enforcement. Their actions didn't just harm individuals, they undermined the very ideals of justice and accountability. In the wake of their trial, reforms were implemented to prevent similar breaches. Internal affairs units were restructured to operate independently with greater oversight authority, ensure thorough investigations into potential misconduct. Ethics training programs were expanded, focusing on real world scenarios to emphasize accountability and the dangers of corruption. Whistleblower protections were strengthened to encourage officers to report unethical behavior without fear of retaliation. Additionally, random audits of sensitive case files were introduced to detect and deter information leaks, marking a significant shift towards a more transparent and accountable law enforcement culture. Picture a precinct briefing room filled with officers watching a presentation on integrity and accountability, a direct response to the Mafia cop scandal. The precinct feels tense but determined as officers vow to ensure such betrayals are never repeated. Yet the damage they caused lingers. Communities that once trusted the NYPD were left questioning its motives and methods. Restoring faith required years of rebuilding relationships, demonstrating transparency, and ensuring that the actions of a few would not define the many. Meetings with community leaders became more frequent. Trust slowly mended through persistent outreach and renewed dedication to accountability. Their betrayal left scars that time has struggled to heal. Today, their story stands as both a cautionary tale and a call to vigilance. The fight against corruption is never ending, and it's up to institutions and individuals alike to safeguard the principles of justice. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of NYPD's darkest chapters. If you found this episode compelling, subscribe to History Crossroads for more stories of history's intersections with law, crime, and society. Until next time, I'm Adam, reminding you to stay curious and question everything.